We're gonna try not to curse. A lot of people up this morning, man.
You wouldn't be your daddy's son if you did.
Wait.
Yeah, but I don't want to. I'm not gonna let loose. You know what I mean? Good morning.
Good morning. You doing good?
I'm doing fine, man. Doing excellent. Doing good. Just I'll wait on y'all to get situated.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. See if you do that, it'll touch right there, and it don't mess up because they can't see you now.
Well, put this. I don't know why this thing won't.
I hold it.
That's too much to do.
I know, but it's what we're gonna have to do because now you're making comments. Okay.
I appreciate y'all logging in this morning, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are we falling down?
All right.
There we go. There we go. So, like I said, good morning. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You doing well?
Yeah. I'm cool, man. Just got up early, getting on my wife's nerves, running around trying to make sure I was ready for this,
Well, that's what we do sometimes. Sometimes we get on their nerves, and every now and then they get on ours.
No, I'm not gonna say that. I can't afford it. I can't afford to say all of that. So.
Okay, she's trying to get some lights done here.
Yeah. I'm just waiting on you. I know the look. I know the looks. I knew that. I knew that was the case.
You good?
Huh?
Was that good?
Yeah, took it off the book.
I will. Just look at the light. How about that?
It's a little better.
A little better?
Turn that one down. I don't know.
Oh man, I see you particular about your lighting like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got
to be a silhouette.
Yeah, you got to be responsible with that melanin. That's what that is.
Absolutely.
When I take pictures with fans and stuff after shows, I tell them we got to be melanin conscious. Everybody turn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess we can go.
Yeah. Okay. So, first questions. I had to make sure I got, sent the right questions. I know every election, every presidential election, everybody says this is the most important election. Like, that's like a just a term. Everybody's starting to use. Oh, this is so important. Oh, this is the most important one, or this that. Like now with this one, it seems to be particularly true. Like like. Would you like to expound on that? You know what I mean? Like as far as this particular election.
Well, I've been saying for some time now that I consider every election to be important. So I don't like to call one election more important than the other. Mm-hmm. Because as I say to people all the time, especially the millennials, I said to them, look, you've never seen a president at your school board meeting. So your school board is very, very important to your children. Right. And to your children is much more important than who may be sitting in the White House. So every election is important. Right. But some elections are more consequential than others. Mm. And I do believe that this election, this president's election, is probably the most consequential election we've had in this country since maybe 1860. Now, that's the year that Abraham Lincoln was elected president of the United States. It's kind of interesting because last night during the debate, here was Trump comparing himself to Abraham Lincoln. Trump said he'd done more for black folks than any other president since Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln signed a couple of Emancipation Proclamations, two freeing the slaves in the District of Columbia, and then in the rest of the slave states. Now, here's Trump talking about him being compared to that. What are the consequences that have flown from Trump's presidency? Now, Emancipation Proclamation came from Lincoln's. We got the Voting Rights Act under Lyndon Johnson. We got the Medicaid, Medicare, Higher Education Law, Elementary Secondary Education Act. All these things came under Lyndon Johnson. I would like to see this man compare himself to any one of those things to show us one thing that he did. But here is what's important about this election. And here are the consequences.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always found it, I'm a comedian, but I always find that comment, real comical and say it's basically pretty much insulting to say, well, I've done more for black folks than anybody else. But, and for those of y'all who are just tuning in on the live, I have Congressman Jim Clyburn here, you know what I mean? So it's because some people ask, like, who am I talking to? I said, no. But I'm watching an argument go on right now. It's like, well, who is this? And they're like, you don't know who that is? Like, so, but for those of you who don't know, this is Congressman Jim Clyburn, like I've been posting on my page and saying that we were going to be going live this morning. So now, me being from South Carolina, I know you are too. We're from the same city, actually.
Right.
Good old Sumter.
Good old Sumter.
Which might be arguably the greatest city in America, but
well, look, yes, one thing we may ought to say to your listeners, look, this is Sumter, South Carolina, named after Thomas Sumter, the general, Revolutionary War general. This is not Fort Sumter.
Right.
Fort Sumter is down off the coast of Charleston. Every now and then I'm running around the country. He said, oh, yeah, you where the Civil War started. No, not. The Civil War started over 100 miles away from Sumter, South Carolina. So sometimes it's necessary to let people know that it's a difference.
Yeah. Oh no. I trust me. I travel. When I was traveling, of course, I get that question every now and then. But believe it or not, no matter where I go, I always run into somebody either from Sumter or they know somebody from Sumter.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the Shaw Air Force Base sort of made Sumter cosmopolitan. Now you got the headquarters of the Third Army is now there. And when I was growing up, before your time, one of the biggest industries in this country really was the Williams Furniture Factory. Most of the furniture, all the stuff is up in High Point, North Carolina. In recent years, used to be right there in Sumter, South Carolina. Then we had the world's largest pigeon plant. We used to call them pigeons. I think people call them something else now, but they still eat them just like they eat chickens. All that was sitting there in little old Sumter, South Carolina.
Man, I've never eaten a pigeon. I'm not even gonna ask you if you. We're not even gonna go there, man. Like,
what you call them, squab or something now? Whatever they call it now.
Okay.
They ain't nothing but a pigeon. Come on, man.
Right. Yeah, I actually have a pigeon story. I think I'm a funeral director too.
I do know you're a funeral director. That's why when I'm around your dad, I don't let him shake my hand too long.
But somebody had I didn't know pigeons could be white, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah.
People like to do the releasing of the doves, but they actually handed me a white pigeon. It wasn't a dove, you know. And I guess because pigeons are trained differently and they know how to.
Absolutely.
But I had a pigeon. I don't know if this pigeon had some kind of disease or something like that, but the pigeon seemed to have collapsed in my hand before I released it.
Oh my goodness.
So I was standing there in front of the family real nervous. You know what I mean? I had to come up with a plan. I was like, if the pigeon doesn't wake up, if I was gonna try to do like a little sky hook over the tent, like just kind of, release him. And
Absolutely.
and hopefully he would land on the tent and it make it seem
I
like he flew
understand.
away.
Yeah, that's great.
But he woke up. He woke up and flew.
He woke up. Oh, good.
Yeah, so we were good. But okay. So, and I wanted to ask you too. You've been in politics for a long time.
Yeah.
And what changes do you see, like from the beginning to now? What changes, if any? Because some people say more things change, the more they stay the same. But what changes do you think have occurred? I mean, socially, because I know that the social climate probably was a lot different. Stepping in then to now.
Well, the politics has changed a whole lot. It's become sort of a combat sport. It's always been competitive. And of course, I guess if you go way back, even before my time, people used to win elections in the South by campaigning on how effective they'll be keeping black folks in their place and that sort of thing. And, even more than we've seen back in the 1968 presidential, George Wallace, and the kind of things he stirred up. But we had gotten beyond that. Things have changed a whole lot. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 brought more people of color into office. And then came the internet. And I've been telling people that I think it's the most, one of the best things that ever happened was the advent of the internet. But it's also one of the worst things that's ever happened. Because then all of a sudden, those people who had been pushed to the sidelines, pushed out of the political arena, they weren't running the elections. All of a sudden, they have weaponized the internet. They can hide behind it. You never know who you're talking to, who you're conversing with. They don't have to ever account for the things that they put out on the internet. You know my daughter Jennifer. I got 2 other daughters. I hear from them all the time about what people are saying about me on the internet, and it's not necessarily anybody who even know me. They just make things up. They put them out there, and a certain number of people are going to believe it. That's why we got a president now who lies all day, every day. But some people believe this guy. And here's the Washington Post documented almost 50,000 lies that he's told since he's been in office. And people believe it. I watched the debate last night. He was lying all over the place. But a lot of people believe this stuff. And so that's what happens with the internet. And that's what's changed politics a whole lot. 4 years ago, I will never believe that 90,000 people voted for down ballot races and did not vote for president in 3 states. In Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and Wisconsin. 90,000 people voted in all the local races, but did not vote in the presidential election. I'll never believe that. Right here in South Carolina, you remember several years ago, right there next door to us there in Sumter, over in Manning, a young man named Alvin Green ran for the United States Senate. Nobody ever heard of Alvin Green. Nobody heard from him since either. But he came into the Democratic primary, and all of a sudden, he wins the Democratic primary. Everybody said, how could that be? I said at the time, there's only one way that this happened. And somebody hacked into the system. I will always believe that the Russians and whoever else working with them was using South Carolina as a warm-up to what happened 4 years ago. I'll always believe that.
Oh man, we get
so, and that's the big change.
Yeah.
That's the big change.
Yeah.
The faceless stuff. So I tell people all the time, if somebody is telling you something about me, why don't you think about your interactions with me, your experiences with me, or ask somebody if you don't know who I am. Don't take the word of a faceless person putting stuff on Facebook or whatever other book they may put it on, and now it's all coming out. That Facebook was complicit with the Russians. Now, I sit in the Congress and we do some investigations, and one of the things I can tell you, and this was a dead giveaway to me, when we found out that Facebook was being paid for a lot of their advertisement in rubles, not in dollars, but in rubles. That's Russian money. They were paid that way. So that got to let you know, if they were being paid in rubles, it's got to be the Russians. And so we ought to be very careful. And if the Russians, who are dedicated to replacing us all the way back to Khrushchev, that they have said that their aim is to replace this country as the #1 country in the world. And here we got a president who's playing games with Russians all day, every day, and people sit out here and respond to him. Look, one of the things I said 2 years ago, I was on CNN, and Don Lemon asked me a question. He said, "Are you comparing this president to Adolf Hitler?" I said, "No. Putin is Hitler. Our president is Mussolini." You can go back and look on, I believe, if my memory serves, it was January 28, 2017. Right out of his state, it was 2018, after his State of the Union address. And I made that statement. Lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, I turned on my TV. This man is coming out of the Walter Reed Hospital, standing out on the Truman balcony, and here are the national pundits on TV looking at him up there and says, he is in his Mussolini stance. They start calling him Mussolini. Now, when I said it 2 years ago, I got all kinds of hate mail. People kept telling me what a crazy person I was and all of that. Now, Joe Scarborough called him Mussolini. His other sidekick on the show with him called him Mussolini. Well, I saw it 2 years ago, and I've been telling people that this guy does not plan to leave the White House. He's trying to create all the chaos he can possibly create. Martin Luther King Jr. was an incredible person. I met him back, in fact, I met him the same weekend I met John Lewis. We were all together back when there was some friction between us in the student movement, what we call SNCC. There was friction between us and SCLC, simply because we kind of believed that Martin Luther King Jr. was telling us to disobey unjust laws, and he knew we were going to jail for it. But up until October 1960, Martin Luther King Jr. himself had never been to jail. Now, growing up there in Sumter, my dad is a preacher right there at Walker Street Church of God.
Right.
My dad always taught me, you lead by precept and example. Now, nonviolent disobedience, that's a precept. What's the example? You got to go to jail too. You got to set the example.
Right.
So if you go back and check, you will see it was after October 16th. In fact, the week after October 16th, 1960 was the first time that Martin Luther King Jr. had ever gone to jail, because we told him in that meeting, we believe in what you're doing, but we're here to follow your example, not your precepts. And that's what you have to do with this president. That's what we have to do with everything. But King told us in his last book, the last book he wrote before being assassinated, King, you know, the guy had such a great life. People think he lived 100 years. King was killed at the age of 39.
Right.
He was 39 years old when he was killed. He was only about 24 years old, maybe 26, when he started that movement, when he took over the movement. He didn't start it.
Right.
It was started by other people, and he moved down there to Montgomery from Boston, where he had gotten his PhD, and he went down to Montgomery, and he was the youngest preacher in town, and the only preacher who had not mortgaged himself to the local power structure. That's how he became the leader. He didn't come the leader because he was, everybody thought too much of him. This is the newest guy in town. He ain't got no mortgages yet.
Right.
So he could go out and take the chance. So that's how King became a leader.
Right.
And I know a little bit about that. The first time I went to jail, you know, you remember Matthew Perry, big time lawyer and federal judge. Matthew Perry always called me his star witness. Not because I had done anything, but when I went to jail, they said, well, somebody got to go on the stand. And we know that every time a name gets put in the papers, the parents can lose their jobs. And they say, oh, now, Clyburn, your daddy ain't preaching to no white people. Your mama ain't fixing no white people's hair. They can't lose their jobs. So you're the one that's going on the stand. So that's how I became Matthew Perry's star witness. I didn't do a thing, but my parents had done it. Right. So that's the way this thing works. And what we've got to do, in my opinion, is remember this. When I talk about the consequences of an election, the consequences that flowed from Abraham Lincoln's election, the Emancipation Proclamation, ushered in the period that we call the Reconstruction era.
Right.
You remember that from your studies?
Yeah. Well, they didn't touch on it, but I read about it. Okay.
Well, the Reconstruction lasts only 12 years.
Right.
From 1863, it was over in 1877. You know how it came to an end? Rutherford B. Hayes became president of the United States, and he brought it into Reconstruction. Guess what? Rutherford B. Hayes became president of the United States by one vote. One vote. So your listeners should know that one vote brought an end to Reconstruction. One vote ushered in Jim Crow laws that we all lived under. And I'm saying to people, don't let your one vote put us back to where we were when Rutherford B. Hayes, by one vote, brought an end to Reconstruction. You know, I'm the 9th African American to serve in Congress from South Carolina in the history of our country. But you know what the problem is? There's 95 years between number 8 and number 9. Number 8, George Washington Murray, who also was from Sumter. George Washington Murray, who lived right there in Sumter. You live right up there on what is now Church Street.
Yeah.
Okay. George Washington Murray left Congress in 1897. I got elected in 1992. Why? Because when Reconstruction came to an end, when Jim Crow came, these new laws came, and these new laws stayed with us until 1954. From Set the first Supreme Court decision dealing with this was 1872, Cruikshank decision, Cruikshank v. Louisiana. And then the next one was Plessy versus Ferguson, also a Louisiana case. And those cases put us in the dark ages. So I want to say to all your listeners, one vote caused that. Rutherford B. Hayes won by one vote. You got one vote. Don't let your one vote be the cause of us going back because the clock is being turned back. Big headline this morning. When this lady gets approved for the Supreme Court, it's going to be a 6-3 court against Black interests. 6-3 against Black interests. Now, when the Brown v. Board of Education was decided, it was 9-0 in favor of Black people. And from that day to this one, there have been some sinister entities out there working to turn the clock back. So they're now going from 9-0 in our favor. They've gotten up to 6-3 against us. And if this man gets reelected, he will turn this court into 9-0 against us. It's just that simple. And so I want to say to all your listeners out there who talking about, well, you know, I got this problem with Joe Biden. And just like Trump last night, the 1994 crime bill, you are responsible for the 1994 crime bill. Let me say something about the 94 crime bill. The 1994 crime bill did not start mandatory minimums. Joe Biden mentioned it last night, but I think he was trying to be calm. I wish he said the way I'm saying it right now. The 1994 crime bill is not the source of mandatory minimums. That came in the 1986 crime bill. Go check it. That came in the 1986 crime bill. Now, the 1994 crime bill kept it, but it also reduced, if you remember, they had 100-1 crack cocaine to powder cocaine. Go back and check it. They cut back those 100-1s. And yours truly, along with Bobby Scott, the congressman up in Virginia, tried to eliminate that 100-1. We got it down to 18-1. We never could get the Republicans to agree to make it 1-1. We didn't have the votes, and they insisted upon it being 18-1, and that's what it is today. And if Joe Biden gets elected, we're going to eliminate that. We're going to do that, and it's going to be 1-1. And so tell your listeners as you talk to them. Now, you want to, my daughter Jennifer thinks you are the greatest comedian floating around.
And she's right.
So she thinks so. You know, I'm old school, so I don't hear you as often as she does. But she's been singing your praises. She said, but you got all this influence and all these people out there. So I want your people to listen to this. Here's what was in the 1994 crime bill. The Violence Against Women's Act in the 94 crime bill. Community policing in the 94 crime bill. Assault weapons ban in the crime bill. And guess what? Pattern and practices. To investigate police departments, when you see patterns and practices taking place, you go in and investigate them. That's in the 1994 crime bill. Drug courts in the 1994 crime bill. It was Joe Biden that put drug courts in the 94 crime bill so we can get people who are arrested for possession of marijuana and that kind of stuff would not be put in those criminal courts, but they would go to drug courts. I haven't seen anybody give Joe Biden credit for that, but he did it. I've never seen anybody give Joe Biden credit for the Violence Against Women's Act, but he did it. And so we keep talking about the unintended consequences that they didn't get rid of in 94, that came in 1986. Now, I don't know why. I've talked to Joe Biden about this, and I've asked him, man, go down the list of what was good in the crime bill, and then tell people this. We passed the 1994 crime bill. I was there, and I was one of the people who voted for it. The majority of the Black caucus voted for it because we were urged to support it by the Black community. The civil rights groups urged us to support that crime bill. And everybody heaping all the doggone blame on, I now almost crushed this now, heaping all the blame on Joe Biden. And all of us were complicit in that. But guess what? We passed the crime bill in the spring of 1994. We lost the House in November 1994. Newt Gingrich took over the House of Representatives in 1994. And they took all the good stuff out. They got rid of the assault weapons ban. Right now, you got a 16, 17-year-old kid walking down the street with an AK-47 on his shoulder. He shoots two people, and Trump defends him. Trump has not said anything to it. Told me he shot those two people, but they won't kill him. He defends a 16-year-old walking down the street with an AK-47. If Joe Biden had had his way, that bill that he passed in 1994 banning assault weapons, that kid would not have had the assault weapon. There's nobody talking about that. The only thing they're talking about is what the Russians are telling them to talk about. That's what's on the internet out here, this foolishness. I just wish people would just take the time and find out what the truth is. You know, Jennifer came to me the other day and she was all upset because somebody got on the internet that they can't name one thing that Congressman Clyburn ever did for Black people. Well, she got on there and she said she listed 18 things I had done, but I would just do this. When I handed out those scholarships last month? No, in August, to 175 kids, sending them off to college, give each one of them a laptop, each one of them a software package, and each one of them got from $1,000 to $5,000, $1,000 to $6,000 each. I ain't seen none of them people on the internet online that day. We did it all in 50 minutes on a Zoom, and I ain't seen none of them. That's 175 this year. I did 150 last year, 150 the year before that. That's got nothing to do with Congress. That's what I do as a volunteer. But let me tell you something I've done that everybody's enjoying and don't even know who did it. I was talking to a young man. He's not a comedian, but he's got a show like this one. I don't know what he call it. He is maybe a podcast, because I got one of them too.
Right.
Now, I was talking to him day before yesterday, and we were talking about my accomplishments, and he asked me, what are you most proud of? I said, well, it all depends on what you're talking about. I said, if you're talking about in the field of education, quite frankly, I think I'm most proud of the Call Me Mr. program. The Call Me Mr. program, and I started telling him, he said, man, I know what that is.
Yeah.
I'm a graduate of Call Me Mr.
Uh-huh.
And I asked him, well, did you know that Jim Clyburn started that with an air mark that I gave to Clemson University to develop that program that's now going nationwide? No. Huh. And I guarantee you that most of the Call Me Mr. People, graduates, have no idea that's a Jim Clyburn program started with an air mark that I gave to Clemson University for them to go out and develop that. And you know what the aim was and still is? To put Black men in elementary schools so that elementary kids can have role models. So that's education. If you ask me about economic development, the #1 industry in South Carolina happens to be tourism. Now, everybody talk about Charleston, everybody talk about Hilton Head and Myrtle Beach. Well, let me tell you something. Most of the stuff in Charleston or Hilton Head or Myrtle Beach don't benefit Black communities. So what I decided to do, if tourism is going to be our #1 industry, I decided to create some heritage corridors. The South Carolina National Heritage Corridor, the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor. You know what Gullah Geechee is?
Yeah.
Your listeners know what that is?
Yeah.
That's now a National Heritage Corridor. I did that so that the Black communities up and down the South Carolina coast could benefit from the tourism. Now, when I got elected, South Carolina didn't have a national park. Today they got 3. The Congressman National Park, right there outside of Columbia. We got the Reconstruction Era National Park and Network coming up out of Beaufort, all the way up to Charleston, and it can be all around the country if you want to be a part of the network. And we got the Fort Sumter, Fort Moultrie National Park. Now those 2 cultural corridors, South Carolina National Cultural Corridor, Gullah Geechee, and them 3 national parks, guess what? They got one thing in common. Jim Clyburn created all 5 of them by law. I introduced the legislation that created all 5 of them. So I don't go around walking down the street and say, look here, y'all, I just created the national park. No, I do what I think is good for the communities. But you listen to them guys on the internet who don't know nothing, just mix stuff up. And so I can go through all kinds of stuff. If I wish I had time to tell you about the argument I had with Strom Thurmond when I was trying to create that courthouse there in Columbia, get it funded and named for Matthew Perry, and when Strom Thurmond wanted his name on it. I said, oh no, we're going to put this Black judge's name on this post office. And I had a public fight. Go back and look at the newspapers and see what a fight I had with Strom Thurmond. And I won that fight. And so I'll tell your listeners, do your own research. Don't listen to these jokers on the internet, because they don't mean you're no good.
Right. So, and you kind of touched on something on what I wanted to ask you. You kind of touched on it earlier. It's so many people that say, "Oh, my vote doesn't count," or there's no point in doing this and no point in going to vote. I have my reasons for not voting and all this other stuff. And what do you say to people who try to encourage, or better yet, I should say, I think one of the biggest problems that happened in the last presidential election was a large number of people said that, well, I'm going to hold my vote, or I'm going to boycott the vote, or whatever the case may be. And to me, that was a bigger problem than, not voting is worse than voting for the wrong person. To me, you know what I mean? So what do you say to people who think that the best thing to do is to just sit at home and not vote at all?
Well, I'm very glad that John Lewis didn't take that attitude. That's the first thing I'm going to say to you. John Lewis was 25 years old when he went across that Edmund Pettus Bridge and was beaten to near death. John Lewis and I talk about it a whole lot. As I tell you, we've been friends since October 1960. Never knew we would serve together in the Congress. But when he went across that bridge, the reason he walked across that bridge, he and 599 others, there were 600 people walking across that bridge that day. He went across that bridge because at the time, only 2% of the Black people in Alabama were registered to vote. Not because they didn't want to register to vote. They wanted to be registered because they wanted to vote, because they wanted to get out of the cotton fields, because they wanted to get off the back of the bus, because they were trying to get a decent education. Arthurine Lucy, you may not recognize that name. In fact, I was on a show a couple of days ago, and I was talking to a lady. I'll tell you who it is, the lady who was going to replace John Lewis in Congress. I was doing a fundraiser for her several days ago, And I was talking about this history, and I mentioned Arthurine Lucy. And I noticed a smile came across her face. I'm looking at her on the Zoom thing. And when she came up to talk, she said, I didn't realize you knew Arthurine. Yeah, she said, that's my aunt. 95 years old, but she's still living. And so that's what, please, I want to get in touch with her. Mm-hmm. She integrated. See, a lot of people remember Mississippi and the integration of schools in Mississippi. People don't realize in Alabama. So these people didn't give up. They stayed engaged, and I'm glad they didn't. So you can hold your vote to do what with? You can't eat it for your evening meal. You can't drink it for your morning coffee. Why are you holding it? I'm glad John Lewis didn't. Because when John Lewis went across that bridge, 6 months after that, we got the Voting Rights Act of 1965. If we didn't get the Voting Rights Act of 1965, there would not be 55 black people sitting in the United States Congress today. I'm going to say that again. There are 55 black people in the United States Congress today. And when this election is over, they're going to be 56 because Jeremy Harrison coming.
Yeah, he is.
And I think that I have no idea, but I really believe that Espy got a real shot down there in Mississippi. And I think Warnock got a shot there in Georgia. Yeah. And that would put 3 new black people in the Senate. And we're going to elect some other black people to the United States Congress. So withhold your vote for what? And again, it ain't just about the president. It's about the legislature. It's about city council, county council, school boards. You need to be voting every time they open the polling places. And if you ain't going to vote for Jim Clyburn, you know, I might be upset with that. But go out and vote for the school board. I got a daughter running for the school board in Richland County. Vote for her. Don't, say her name. Whatever you got against me, don't keep it against her.
Right.
You know, come on. We got to stop this foolishness.
Yeah.
And let me tell you one other thing about that. Everybody telling me, well, you know, Joe Biden this and Joe Biden that. Compare Joe Biden to the alternative, not the Almighty. No, Joe Biden ain't God. He ain't even Jesus. He is not even a perfect man. I've had my disagreements with Joe Biden, but there ain't nothing like I got against with Donald Trump. Here is a man, and I really got to say this. Donald Trump, I got $3. They are children of a black woman. Donald Trump looked in the camera and referred to a black woman as a dog. Here's the president of the United States calling a black woman a dog.
I remember.
I want to know what black man, and now he tells me he planned to get 20% of the black vote. If 20% of the black men vote, if 20% of the black men in this country can abide a president, a white president, looking in the camera and referring to a black woman as a dog, and you tell me you're going to vote for him, you need to have your head examined. Anybody with a black daughter, with a black sister, a black cousin, any man born of a black woman can abide that? Come on. Here he referring to Kamala Harris the other day. When after she got on the ticket, he called her a monster. Now, I was wondering about that. I'm saying, you know, what do you mean by a monster? I've never heard anybody call anybody a monster before. Then lo and behold, earlier this week, I saw a letter being sent out by a white school board voter in Richland County referring to the black chairman of the Richland County school board as a monster. I said, wait a minute. We got to do some research here. Maybe that's a new term. If the president calling Kamala Harris a monster, and a white person in Richland County calling a black chairman of the school board a monster, we got to do some research, buddy. We got to find out what that's about. Now, you and I got too much work to do. You got to get people entertained, and I got to represent people. But we're going to give your daddy something to do. Tell your dad to do some research. Get out of that funeral home. You tell Frank that I said he needs to do some research. Now, you know I love your daddy. Now, he's one of my favorite people.
I can't tell him that.
You can't tell him that?
No.
Well, I'm going to call him up. I'm going to tell him.
Yeah.
I know who can tell him. I'll whisper in your mother's ear. She can tell him.
Right. No, listen, it's been a pleasure, talking to you, and really this whole thing was just to, it's because I have so many people on my page saying, every time I said something about voting or anything like that, there was always some type of negative comments. I wanted to bring you on, and I was happy when my mother texted me and said that your daughter was reached out. I was like, I must be doing something right. You know what I mean? Because then she called me back and said, "But did you reach back out to him?" I said, "Look, if Jim Clyburn wants to talk to me, I'm calling him immediately." I was on my way. I was actually en route somewhere, but I made sure I called your daughter and we talked. And but I wanted to make sure that somebody that I could get you on here and we could actually, you could spread some knowledge and some truth, because people keep talking about how the vote doesn't matter and this and that, but I think it's a spirit of shiftlessness. People are lazy and they just don't feel like doing it. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And now they just kind of, that's a way to, it's a cop out to me, and I'm just glad that you said, you were able to take some time and speak on things that I feel are important, and so many other people feel are important. And, I don't think you'll ever be able to close the mouth of any critic, you know what I mean? But to bring some real substance to.
Well, thank you.
Well,
thank you for giving me this platform today. I really appreciate you. You got to take care of your homeboy now.
Yeah, yeah, man. And we gotta hang out. I want to learn as much as I can. You never know. I might throw my head in the arena, but see, I got to learn how to control my temper.
Don't control it too much. You got to have a little bit of a touch on it. Yeah, you got to have a little bit. As you can hear this morning, I ain't exactly a calm person myself.
Yeah. See, I wanted to ask you if there ever been a time when you wanted to slap somebody, in the Congress, but I'm just tell me about that later.
You don't know how many times, man. I can't count the time. But that would be the respectable way to do. Just slap somebody. I want to kick butt.
Wait. Well, you know what? How about this? If this comedy doesn't work out, you know what I mean, for any reason, they didn't hire me as your staff, I'll be your designated butt kicker.
Well, I'll tell you what, really, after this election, we are going to really get serious about making some connections that we need to make. And people like yourself who understand what this is all about, we got to get you involved in the process. And it may be that you can do this comedy thing on the side. People with your background, your interests, we need to get you involved in the congressional stuff. Man, I would love to have you a part of my efforts here in South Carolina. Let's look at it going forward.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that. Absolutely.
I didn't realize this was a job application this morning, but it worked.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's definitely been a pleasure, man. I'm gonna leave you to have the rest of your morning to yourself. But
okay, buddy.
But thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Hey, that's the same.
Okay, so I appreciate y'all coming on the live. I appreciate all of you. Remember, go out and vote. Polls are open. You get your early voting in, all that other good stuff. But I'm glad I was able to talk to somebody who knows, who can spit some facts. And don't worry, I plan on saving this and posting it again, so you'll be able to go back and look at it. It's very important stuff. We had a great conversation. Thank y'all for tuning in and waking up early in the morning. I appreciate y'all. Thank you very much.